Mayor, check your mic. And we're live.
Check my mic. What are you talking about?
I got an echo, and I'm wondering
Aha.
Did you default?
I did not. Good evening, everybody. This is Ragin' With, and we've got Madeleine Holly-Rosing with us this evening. While we get our intro going, why don't you make sure that you get over to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. We are simulcasting to Ragin AVC as well as Geek Insider. If you're watching on Twitter, great. Get over to YouTube because then we'll be able to see your comments and you'll be able to speak live to our guest. That's right. We are Ragin' With Madeleine Holly-Rosing. Make sure that you get over there and we'll be right back after this.
Ragin'.
Asian. Cajun.
Everybody, this is Ragin' With. We are sitting with Madeleine Holly-Rosing, and we'll be dropping the card right here to say hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well this evening. It is really good to have you here. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me on. I saw that the beautiful card you did of me when I actually have hair and makeup done, so it's like
This is live streaming, and we're home and we're relaxed and everything, and maybe have a beverage on hand. I don't know.
Of course.
But it is a pleasure to have you in the hot seat. And one of the things that we love talking about is the Genesis story. I mean, you've written screenplays, you've done prose, comic books. Now you've got an audio book, I guess, an audio drama.
Audio drama.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a series that you're launching, and it's doing rather well on Kickstarter right now. But what in the world were you thinking when you said, I think writing is the way I want to go?
Well, I've been writing creatively, I think, ever since I learned how to write, because I love to tell stories, and I always had trouble going to sleep as a kid growing up, so I'd always tell myself stories and to get myself to sleep. And of course, I was always the hero of my own story because, that's what you do when you're 10.
Always the hero. I liked being the villain.
So I've always loved writing stories, and I started doing it more and more. But then when I reached about 13 or 14, maybe 15, I stopped because I realized I didn't think I was very interesting then. I really hadn't had a life. I was only 15. What are you going to do? Right. And so I said, okay, let's go live a life and then start writing, have some experience, not only, personal experience, but emotional experience and everything that comes with it. So it wasn't until my 20s that I started writing again. And I, had always loved TV and the movies. And I started taking continuing education screenwriting classes while I was living in New York at the time. So I was taking the classes at NYU. And there was like some fun anthology series that I had submitted to. I had a great instructor. And I actually almost made the cut with one of my first little anthologies that I did for one show. When they say, we've already done something similar like this, but, keep sending stuff in. We want to see more. And that's always encouraging when you're a young writer. And when I say young, I mean unproduced, not necessarily age wise. Mm-hmm. And then, life went on. I've done a lot of things. I will keep my age to myself because that will startle too many people. And at the time I was living in New York, and I moved back to California. I eventually went to UCLA professional program in screenwriting, and then was accepted in the MFA program in screenwriting. And that's where I originally developed Boston Metaphysical Society. It started out as just a regular detective, paranormal detective period piece set in the late 1800s, sort of modeled after Mulder and Scully. I basically wanted to take Mulder and Scully and put them in the 1800s, where there was more social structure and more organic difficulties for them to ever get together and have them come from different class backgrounds. And then one day I was sitting in Melnitz's Hall at UCLA, and a friend of mine like leapt over the couch and sat down next to me and said, "Steampunk." I went like,
"What the heck is steampunk?"
What? And he said, "Steampunk." He goes, "I think you should develop your story as a steampunk story." Now, I had heard of steampunk, didn't know a lot about it. So I went and did my research, read some stuff, and I said, "You're right. You're absolutely right." So I redeveloped it. At the time, it was called like 1900 Detective Agency or something like that. But as I continued developing it, one, I decided it had to be set in Boston. And no, I'm not from Boston. I did live on the East Coast for quite a while. But the reason it's set in Boston, and people always ask me this, because I'm a California girl, is the story pretty much demanded it. In the United States in the late 1800s and in other many parts of the world, it was a really, really violent time of change, social, cultural, and technological. And many people did not respond well to it. And I knew I wanted to give the story almost a European flavor in the background to it. And New York and Chicago had been done to death. So I looked at Boston. And when you say the word Boston to an American, it evokes almost an emotional response because it has such deep context in our history and culture, and it's almost a mythological place in our history and it's also a very intimate city that the story really demanded to be set there. And so that's why it became Boston. The rest was about the Metaphysical Society part was a week of me churning through different terms that they used during that time period that talked about the paranormal or agencies or clubs. And I used the term metaphysical in the way it was defined in the 1800s, meaning a paranormal or supernatural. Now it's taken on the connotations of a more spiritual type of thing. And that's not what Boston Metaphysical is about at all. And then society I brought in because that was a word that was commonly used for a group of people who were joined together to do something, whether like a club or an agency that we would use now. So in a nutshell, that was kind of the beginning of it. But I will say the research behind it came a couple years before when I wrote a screenplay called Stargazer for the Sloan Fellowship at UCLA. And if you're not familiar with the Sloan Fellowship, it awards grants to filmmakers and screenwriters who depict scientists and engineers accurately, and also the science accurately. And Stargazer was about a Scottish-American woman who arrived in this country pregnant and penniless, who was abandoned by her husband in the late 1800s, Boston. And she was hired as a maid by the director of the Harvard Observatory, who soon discovered her attention to detail. And her name is Mina Fleming. To make a long story short, she eventually discovered over 10,000 stars and developed her own stellar classification system. And I was fortunate enough that that particular script won the Sloan Fellowship and helped pay for a year at UCLA.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was it. So the research behind Boston Metaphysical came through Stargazer from that time period.
I'm kind of curious with the writing process and everything. I know for myself, when I'm writing, I get lost in research. I get down a rabbit hole and I love it. And it's just like, it's something for the backstory. And then before I know it, I've researched it to the point where I almost don't recognize what I've worked on. You sound like you love technology. You love the metaphysical just from the type of pieces that you write. Have you ever gotten lost in your research, and how do you kind of bring that back and stay on track?
Well, yeah, no, obviously you have to love, if you're a writer, and particularly if you're doing you have to love research. You have to. Or otherwise your readers are going to go, that's wrong. And they're going to definitely let you know about it. But I have learned over the years when it's like I'll be doing the research and I look for very specific things, and then I do a little background, but then I have something that ticks off in the back of my head. It's like, okay, it's time to walk away from the research and go back to writing, because a lot of this research maybe end up like 2 lines in, one whole chapter, just to give the flavor of the background of the time period. And I also do a lot of research when I'm doing my outlining. So I'll have notes and notes and notes to refer to as part of the outline. And then I integrate it within the outline to make sure that there's certain things I want to show or to do or to see, which I've been doing with the new, I'm outlining the next Boston Metaphysical graphic novel. And I don't want to give away spoilers, but we're not in Boston anymore. We do some traveling. So, we're in this new space. So I've been doing a lot of historical research for that new space, and then putting it in the context of the universe that the alternate historical universe that I've created to make it all logical, for my universe.
I love how you say alternate historical universe, because there are a lot of people who are out there who want to kind of touch on the historical events to kind of bring their story context, but without being a historical book. And so how do you marry that? Like, steampunk has always been one of those things for me personally, difficult to write, because you're trying to marry tech that didn't really exist into a time period, where it's more classical. People have that like romanticized idea of what it was like back then, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy lifestyle. It wasn't an easy way to live. But merging those two things, how were you able to kind of maybe get past any barriers that you may have had to kind of create this world in steampunk?
Well, I actually refer to Boston Metaphysical as more steampunk-ish than classic steampunk. It is actually more alternate history. And so what I did a while ago was go back and figure out when it all changed. Where was the point in our history that it diverged from what we know now? And so from that basis on, I've constructed that universe. And so, my job is to stay consistent within the universe I've constructed. And in Storm of Secrets, which is the prequel to the novel prequel to the graphic novel, it actually allowed me to go into that more. So I can tell you that the divergence happened after the War of 1812, which we lost, by the way. With the British, we actually lost that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most American textbooks won't say that. They'll say that we won. I'm like, no, we didn't. We didn't. We didn't win that one. But yeah, that for my world, that's when the divergence happened. And so, you know, you can look back on that. And I try to marry the tech of the time with some sci-fi elements without trying to go too over the top, and just leave them as organic elements within the story. The gadgets never drive the story. It's always the characters. And the gadgets are part of the world in which they live.
So you just basically are given descriptions. This is what it looks like, but I'm not going to tell you how it works.
I don't go into minute detail how the gadget works.
No, I'd much prefer the history and the apparel and, you know, the world of the time than breaking down the details of all the tech.
Well, understanding, understanding the characters too. I mean,
well, for sure.
We become emotionally invested in the characters, not so much the stuff. And so it's trying to find that balance of making sure that you you show, don't tell, don't bonk people on the head with this, you know, and finding that balance of immersing them and finding those emotional elements that help bring people into your world is so important.
Yes, and I do. If I can make the science accurate, I do. If the story demands something else, then the story demands something else. There is a section in the second issue of the original 6-issue miniseries where Granville finds some residue and he figures out it's barium yttrid barium oxide. My husband's going to yell at me. It's not that. It's yttrium barium oxide, which is a residue of electromagnetism. And there's the one page where he's holding it up and it's green and it's supposed to be green. The real stuff is green in this context. And he says yttrium barium oxide, and Samuel and Caitlin are going what? And then he explains what it is and what it means. And so, you know, anyone who's reading it goes she got that right. So yeah, sometimes we do go into little details like that because it's a lot of fun, for one, you know, and so where I can, I do, if it's important for the story.
I love that too, because it doesn't necessarily dumb it down. I think every once in a while it's good to look in the dictionary or the thesaurus and go, what is that exactly? At least when people do that, you've got them, in my opinion.
Yeah. I also have the added advantage of I have a rocket scientist husband. So every once in a while, if I get I was like, honey, can you let's talk about this? And we'll talk about something. And like I said, I try to get it right when I can. But sometimes the story, you just, you know, when you're dealing with ghosts and demons and stuff, it's come on.
Right. The imagination goes.
Yeah, the imagination. It's let's just move on.
You said something about most people don't like change earlier. And so when you are kind of creating these worlds and things like that, have you had a lot of pushback from people maybe over, you know, I mean, before, when you were first coming out with this idea of Boston Metaphysical Society, when people are like, well, that's not accurate, and kind of fighting for it and saying that it's an alternate history?
Actually, no. I haven't. I think people get that it's fiction and that it's alternate history. And yes, in the original 6-issue miniseries, Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini are part of that storyline. And Tesla does reappear certain instances. And in fact, Thomas Edison appears in the audio drama. which was a lot of fun. And for those of you watching who don't know, Granville T. Woods, who is part of the Boston Metaphysical team, was a historical figure himself. He was an African-American scientist who pretty much got lost in history. And I dug him out when I was originally developing this story. And as an aside, the real Granville, he did specialize in railroad switching technology. He lived in Ohio. But since I'm the writer, I brought him to Boston because, I can do that.
I love it. When you were talking about outlining,
yes.
And I love that. I wish I did it better at all, or if at all. And it's so important to get the structure and everything. When it comes to writing your stories, though, where does the first idea come from? I mean, we've talked to a lot of writers who said sometimes I wake up from a dream, sometimes I'll get this whole idea from a title, sometimes it's just a conversation that I might have overheard. And so when this first came to you, in what form did it come, and how did it grow from there?
Well, it originated in a visual medium as a TV pilot script. And so it's always, up until the audio drama and until I wrote the novels and the short stories, it's primarily been in a visual medium. So usually I think of a visual first, particularly with the comic. The first page, there's always going to be that first panel. What is going to be the first image on that first panel on that first page? And that's going to be driving the rest of the story. So I change that all the time, man. I really work. It's like when writing a novel or short story, you rewrite those first two lines, like, I don't know, a gazillion times, to get it to you finally, get it to the point where you like it.
I love that you're sitting here because you've pretty much done everything when it comes to writing, with the prose, with comic book script writing, with screen writing. Very different forms of writing. Is there one particular one that you love?
I actually like all of them because they exercise my brain in a different way, and in a different creative way. But I guess at this point, my first love has become comics, because even though I started with, script writing for film and TV, I mean, that is a visual writing. So it is an easier changeover to come over to comics, since they're both different types of visual writing, though they are different types of writing. And you do have to take the time to learn how to write sequential art, and not think that you automatically know how to do that just because you can write a screenplay, because it's not the same. And it just, by the response I got from the original 6-issue miniseries and how the series has grown in the community. I mean, I love the community. I mean, I'd stay just for the community. The indie comic community is great. So yeah, probably the comics. But I will tell you, being able to sit down and write prose every once in a while is like a moment, because you don't have to think about budget and page count. I mean, you do up to a point, but it's not as difficult to produce, because as you know, a comic is expensive. You have to, you pay your artist, colorist, letterer, pre-press person. I mean, it's a team.
One of the biggest struggles that I've had, I started off with prose and spent the last 2 years in comics, writing comic scripts. And going back to prose, though, I don't have that moment. I have, where are my words? Where did they go? It's been one of the hardest things is comic books. Can you share for our listeners what would be like some of the major differences between like a screenplay and a comic book script?
Oh, okay. In a screenplay, as a screenwriter, you're really just writing the blueprint for a movie. There's no direction at all. You don't tell the actors how to act. That's up to the director. Because as soon as they have a director and producer on board, and whoever's has the power in the room is the one who's going to be making the decisions, and it's usually the director. It becomes their film, and you're just supplying the blueprint, and they're making the rest of the decisions of how everything is to be shot, costuming, art direction, everything, and that's their job. And it's your job to hand them the blueprint unless you want to be the director yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike script writing for comics, you are the director and the producer and everything. It is literally a document, a communication document to your team, to your, like I said, your artist, your colorist, your letterer. You have notes in there to all of them of what you want. The way I was taught how to write a comic script is like I would capitalize certain elements in the panel that absolutely had to be in that panel in order to make the story develop and character develop. And then the rest I leave to my artist. Mm-hmm. Because, there's a reason why you hire an artist. They're an artist, and go let them be that.
So being that you're not an artist, I mean, are you an artist first?
No, I can do stick figures pretty well.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is because there are some writers who are very specific when it comes to writing for their comic book script. With the direction that they want to give their artist, they say, oh, I want to pan down. I want this kind of shot and stuff. How difficult was that for you when you were first starting out to kind of give that direction without kind of having that artist brain maybe?
I don't remember it being that difficult. And I am pretty, well, particularly now, I'm pretty specific on the way certain things should be. Though I do I always tell Gwen, hey, if you get inspiration and think of something better, just let me know. Mm-hmm. And I am more than willing to listen. Emily Hugh, who did the first 6 issues, every once in a while she'd blow up a page of mine that I'd written, and she says, I decided to do it this way. I hope you don't mind. And I'd look at it and go like, oh my God, this is great. No, keep it. Let me rearrange dialogue and balloons, and because I don't want to cover up your beautiful art. Mm-hmm. To me, that just makes me a better writer. And it challenges me when I get this beautiful page back and, the dialogue I've written doesn't quite fit or doesn't quite balance or pace. And so I need to go in there and make it better. And that's my job.
I love that. So there is that back and forth communication. It isn't just like a one-off, hey, I got my page back, and it's like maybe significant changes need to be made because they went off the rails. I know that happens. But when they send something back where they took a little bit of creative liberty and for you to look at it and go, I can work with that and maybe move things around, change things up a little bit. That speaks a lot to the creative process and building your team.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, I have to send a note to Gwen like, "Oh, you forgot to put the knife on the table here," and she'll go like, "Oh, damn, I did. I meant to do that." And there's always going to be little things because you're only human, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and a lot of detail too, especially for those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're at the 30-minute mark. We're going to take a little bit of a break here. For anybody who's tuning in, thank you. We are live streaming right now, and you can watch the replay on RAGIN ABC as well as Geek Insider. We are RAGIN with Madeline Holly-Rosing, and for some shameless self-promotion, you can head over to Little Bastard Promos. It's our Facebook group where you can drop your links and share what it is that you're working on. Declare yourself the artist, writer, comic book creator, editor, musician, whatever it is. Head over to Little Bastard Promos and drop your links. We are speaking with Madeline Holly-Rosing, and she has got Boston Metaphysical Society, the Ghost Ship audio drama on Kickstarter right now. The links are in the show notes as well as her social media. Make sure that you follow her everywhere. Just don't peek at her windows because that's weird. And we're back.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
That would be weird. Because I'd have to climb over a fence and over bougainvillea, and it's like, you really?
You know, and the thing with social media is like it's 24/7 and it makes us like readily available, but like no.
No. Yeah.
We need a little bit of distance here. So welcome back. We are speaking with Madeline Holly-Rosing. Your name is longer than mine, and I was just like, wow.
I know. It's yeah. Decided to hyphenate when I got married.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Love talking about the writing process. What would be the biggest challenge for you when it comes to writing, whether it's for TV, comic books, prose? What would be the biggest challenge for you?
The biggest challenge is always time management. I'm a one-woman show, and this has really grown. And yeah, I actually need to get some help at this point, because it's getting a little out of control. But yeah, the administration and the time management in order just to write. When things are I travel a lot. Pre-pandemic, I was doing about 9 to 10 cons a year, plus other small events. Oh, it used to be up to 20. So I've cut back. Yeah, I've cut way back. And then I did 6 just from August to now. And then we're going to be at San Diego limited edition over Thanksgiving weekend. So there's a lot of administrative office work that has to be managed on top of producing now the audio drama. So yes, I hold the producer role for that, which is not glamorous at all, no matter what anybody says. It's more paperwork and legal stuff and scheduling and casting, and but it's been a lot of fun, and I have a great team on that as well.
How do you balance the work-life travel shenanigans? So that you have that balance. There are a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm 24/7. It's all about sitting there and working all day long, sometimes to the detriment of their health.
Yeah, my balance is bad. It's definitely bad. I think the only thing that I definitely do every day is I'm either working out at home or at the gym 5 days a week, because that helps keep me sane. Because I spend so much time, sitting at a desk, going through, I handle all my own social media, marketing. We just finished pretty much sending out over 600 packages for the last Kickstarter. And, big shout out to my husband who helped me. Normally in previous years, I had done it all myself, but I mean, we did really well for the Book of Demons. And he just said, this is going to take you months to do it by yourself. So we just cranked it out. And I think we have the second set of overseas packages. There's only like 12 of them. And then we're like done, except for some stragglers who are waiting for their surveys. And those are, they'll come in whenever they come in.
One of the things before we took that teeny tiny break was you mentioned something about your team.
Yeah.
And team building is so difficult. We say that we often have to kiss a lot of frogs before we hit a prince. And building up that team, a lot of times comes with, I would say, probably a bit of nepotism, because once you find that prince, you don't want to let them go, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, we work well together. Stay with me, please. What has that been like for you, kind of building your team?
I've been very fortunate with the graphic novel. I found Emily Hugh through a mutual friend and hired her to do audition pages, and she knocked it out of the park. So I got her under contract for 6 years. Actually, 6 years, 4.5 years. It's amazing. She stayed with it. She got it done. She's amazing. And then she moved on to bigger and better, which is also awesome. But by then, I was pretty well entrenched in the comic indie world. So when I put the word out that I was looking for a new artist, preferably female, that a friend of mine came to me and said, oh, what about Gwen Tavares? I think she would fit. And so I went and started looking at her stuff. And at the same time she contacted me, I did the same thing, hired her to do some audition sketches, said, you're in. And she's been with me for the last 4 years and is on board for the next one. So I guess I must be a good boss because she keeps coming back for more. And as far as the audio drama, that was interesting because for a few years prior to the pandemic, a few people had mentioned to me, I think this would make a really good audio drama. And I said, well, you're probably right, but I have no idea where to start. Well, then I met Eddie Louise and her husband, Chip Michael, who are the co-creators and producers of an audio drama called Sage and Savant, which is a steampunk sci-fi. It was on for 4 years. And they finished that. And Eddie Louise and I were at the Nebula conference together, also pre-pandemic. And she sat me down and she says, you have to do this as an audio drama. And I said, well, if I do it, you have to help me because I don't have a clue. And she says, okay. Well, then pandemic happened. I'm looking to pivot the business. And so I reached out to her and her husband and say, like, do you want to do this? And they said, yes, we absolutely want to do this. So Eddie Louise came on board as the script editor and also my mentor, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And Chip, her husband, is the audio engineer and the composer. So we have a very lean team and, got them all under contract. And it's, we've had some little minor bumps in the road that are nothing, I think, in the scheme of things. But yeah, if you take a look at the Kickstarter page, there are 2 audio samples there. One is a little scene with Ryan Philbrook, Emily Snyder, and Martin Davis, who play Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville, with all the special effects and the music. Because this audio drama is an 8-episode standalone story. And with a full cast, we have 12 different actors and special effects and original music. So it's like one of those old-time radio plays that used to be on in the day. And it's just turning out beautifully.
That's really exciting. I want to ask you about finding those voice actors, because I know, like with writing, oftentimes, a tool might be a dream board or references and things like that. But when it comes to audio, looking for a particular voice is, in my opinion, not as easy as like looking for a particular look. What was that process like?
Well, I sent out casting notices first for the leads, and then for our major supporting characters and walk-ons. And we got a lot of responses because I talked to Eddie Louise and said, like, okay, we're a low budget, non-union, but what can I offer these people that are going to get me good people, so I can also stay within my budget? And so we came up with a number, which apparently worked because we got some fantastic talent. And it was really, really hard to narrow it down. But what it really came to is, and this may sound funny, but how I always imagined these characters sounded in my own head, the voices in my head, so to speak. And what the reason Emily got the job is she kind of had that sparkle in her voice that I always imagined Caitlin would have.
Mm.
And Ryan Philbrook, who plays Samuel, Samuel's a really complex character. He's kind of a tough guy, sometimes overreacts, but he's highly empathetic. And I needed that empathy to show through his voice. And Ryan does a terrific job of that. Because that's really what Samuel's strong point is. One of his strengths is his empathy. Mm. And for Granville, for Martin, wanted a certain dignity and also a little stuffiness to his voice. And Martin delivers just beautifully. So, and I have to give kudos to our supporting cast too. Ryan Hoyle, who plays Jimmy McLaren, and he and Emily, he's playing Jimmy, she playing Caitlin, are just utterly charming together. And then Boyd Barrett plays Charles Emerson, who is the head of House Emerson, and also a very complex character who just did a bang up job. And kudos to, of course, to H.B. Gibson, who plays Thomas Edison. And man, was that fun to write, because I could just go to town on him. He had so much fun with those lines because he just got to be the snarky SOB that was just, he had a great time. And we love listening to him.
Would you say that a lot of times when you're hearing those voices in your head, it guides the dialogue, or do you work the dialogue and hope that the right voice shows up?
Well, the scripts were all written prior to them being hired. Mm-hmm. There were obviously some edits as we moved on, just because I would recognize something, or we decided that something didn't quite work, but they were really small things. Mm-hmm. And that were easily addressed. I mean, pretty much instantaneously, and we would all agree on. So there wasn't a lot of changes.
Okay, because the next question I was gonna ask was there ever a point where they may have ad-libbed or improved anything, and you were like, yeah, that works?
A couple times there was some small things which worked beautifully. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And both Chip and I, he's the one who laid all the tracks, and he would say like, Ryan or Martin added this, but I think it works. And then I would listen to it and I would say, yeah, I agree. It works. And then sometimes they would add something, and I would just tell Chip, I said, no, you need to edit that out. And, mm-hmm. And so he'd do that.
So you're really hands-on with like the day-to-day and everything with the audio drama.
Well, yeah, because I wrote it, I produced it. It's my IP, so yeah, I kind of have to.
That's a lot of stuff. I mean, and you did say that it wasn't something that you did before.
No. No, Eddie Louise was, I did research on how to write and format an audio script, prior to even starting on this. Mm-hmm. And then I did the first couple episodes, and then she came back with notes, and then I rewrote them again, and then sent them back, and then she sent back to me. And then by doing that exercise was the first couple episodes, and I was really able to move on and understand more of what I needed to do for the rest of the 8.
So if you don't mind me asking, when you say with 8 episodes.
Correct.
Are they all like a specific time, or do each one kind of go at the length that that segment requires? And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes, you stick with like maybe 30 minutes. It's like got to be 30 minutes on the ball. But then the next segment might require 45. Have you kind of stuck with a strict schedule as far as that?
No, they range anywhere from like 30 to 37 minutes,
Mhm.
depending on the episode. It also depends on how much music, how, if there's a certain special effect that takes longer or is shorter. But yeah, they're roughly 30 minutes each, give or take 5 minutes.
And how much input do you have when it comes to like adding music and the sound effects and things like that, or do you rely heavily on somebody at the production team to do that?
That's all Chip. Chip handles that, but he sends them to me for approval. And we've really run through a lot of different iterations for the opening music until we found what I was happy with. And so that's actually done. So it means things are going to move a lot faster now. And then I do listen to some of the sound effects, and my husband listens as well because he's an audiophile. And he actually had some interesting input, which Chip modified, but it worked beautifully. Because, my husband's being like, well, it should sound like this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I said, well, we can't have all of that because that's going to get boring. And so Chip would narrow it down to like 3 things. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because then we get a sense that this thing is happening without it being overly long and boring.
How different is pacing for screenwriting as opposed to audio dramas?
I think the pacing's almost the same. You got to hook somebody in within the first 5 minutes, or else they're gone. Yeah. So
And,
I mean, that's it. I mean, the opening segment is like about little less than 5 minutes long, and that's when all hell breaks out.
See, and with audio dramas too, it's like you don't have the benefit of your eyes filling in anything.
Correct.
I mean, you can listen with your eyes closed, and hopefully that really tips the imagination into bringing them into your world. That's got to have some challenges of its own.
Definitely, because I'm a visual thinker. So when I was writing the audio play, I would think of it visually and then have to translate that into auditory. And then tried not to make it overly expositional.
And we're looking at your Kickstarter right now. This is really cool. The idea of putting the 8 episodes into a flash drive.
Yeah.
So you can carry that anywhere. Now,
yeah, we wanted to. I looked high and low for that one. That's a wooden flash drive, and it. I know it's not something you would find on a ship, but it looks like maybe something you would find on a ship. And so that's why I liked it. And Alejandro Lee did the art, which is gonna be on it, of the American Clipper ship, and the title, of course, the Ghost Ship.
And then the CD disc set is going to be available as well.
Correct.
So we've got that here. Will that be kind of a box set? Or individuals?
That's going to be like in a jewel case. It's 5 discs that'll be in a jewel case.
Okay. And also, there is an opportunity that I see where people can get caught up with the graphic novel.
That's what I was about to ask. Do you feel within the 8 episodes of the audio drama that people are going to be immersed enough that it's standalone, or would it work better if we had prior stories that you'd written?
I think you can listen to it as a standalone. I don't think you have to. I think it will enrich your listening experience if you have. The Ghost Ship is part of what I refer to as the case files of Boston Metaphysical Society. So they're the cases that that happen in between the original 6-issue miniseries, and there'll be like little comments that may allude to things that are happening in the 6-issue miniseries, but it's not a part of this or any right now any future audio drama.
Mm-hmm.
And then yes, the sequels are available as well in both physical and PDF format.
Now, a question for the single issues here. Would you say that they're standalone, or should people who are new to Boston Metaphysical Society, kind of go in order? Is it very linear?
They are standalone, but yeah, they are linear. Scourge the Mechanical Man is the first sequel after the 6-issue miniseries. Then it's Spirit of Rebellion, then Ghosts and Demons, and the latest is the Book of Demons. I kind of call Ghosts and Demons and Book of Demons my demon duology, because they do, even though they're standalone, they do reflect on each other. They do kind of build on each other. And I do add an introduction and a prologue in each of these. So if you start with one of them, because I did that intentionally, because I never know how people are going to start with the series. So at least they can get kind of up to date with what's going on and then enjoy the story. Because I had, when Source Point first, they picked up the 6-issue miniseries in 2019, but Scourge didn't come out till later. I know some people, they started with Scourge and then went to the sequels, and then they were like, well, wait a minute, there's a graphic novel that started before this. I said, yeah, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they got that. But so yeah, you don't need it, but it enriches the experience.
Mm-hmm. And earlier you mentioned something about going to conventions. You said that you went to about 6 in the last couple of months.
Yes.
That's exhausting.
Yes,
She's done
it is.
20 before. It's like, you're either a goddess or you're nuts. I'm not sure which.
I think I'm nuts. Yes, I've been pretty much exhausted for weeks because I came back from New York Comic-Con, and the books arrived for the Book of Demons, and so we started shipping those out, and then the week after that, the Kickstarter for this launched.
Oh boy! So
yeah,
you've been on the go.
It didn't. Let's say I didn't plan for it to work out this way, but it happened. So you just deal with it. I wanted to be finished with the Kickstarter before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a.
What does your 2022 look like then? Are you already lining up events and things like that?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to keep it below 10. I will probably actually be doing some comic book signings in January. A friend of mine, Diggers Comics up in Hemet. I'm going to be, I think we're talking about me coming up there and maybe doing some others in January. They're local. They're fairly local to me. They're an hour or so away.
With so many choices, how do you pick which events that you want to go to?
I usually go to the steampunk events because that's where I started. There's my base, so to speak, my target demographic. And I know I've known these people for years and I adore them. So I just love to go be with them, and they expect me to be there. So I better show up. And the rest primarily have to do with size and location.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference as far as like small, medium, or large events?
Well, small if it's a steampunk event. That's always nice. Otherwise, I guess it depends what you define as medium. I mean, I like events that are about 50,000.
That's nice because you have enough foot traffic, but there seems to be enough time to
Yeah.
kind of communicate and chat
Yeah,
with people.
that's what New York Comic Con was like this year,
Mhm.
because they had limited attendance. And I know the attendees told me they absolutely loved it because they weren't shoulder to shoulder. And I mean, I sold out.
Nice.
Yeah, and I had a great time. Everyone was terrific. You know, it was really well run. Had a great time being there. But yeah, a 50 to 60,000 people event is a nice one for me for precisely those reasons. It's enough of a attendee base where I can find people who would like my stuff, because I realize I'm a niche within a niche. So not everyone's going to like this, and that's fine. They're not supposed to. But it's nice to be an event large enough where I can find those people.
Mm-hmm. And we've only got a couple of minutes left. It's been a pleasure to sit with you and talk about your journey and Boston Metaphysical. I'll get this right, people. Okay, I'm not stroking out. Okay, Boston Metaphysical Society, the Ghost Ship audio drama, which is on Kickstarter right now for 7 more days. It ends November 19th. You've got 302 backers, which is pretty impressive.
Please, yeah.
Yes, and for the audio drama, how close to finished is this? When can people expect, once Kickstarter is over, that distribution can happen?
I know I listed February as the delivery date. I'm actually hoping January. Chip does have all the voice tracks laid for all 8 episodes. So we're well into production. And I know he told me he's going to be delivering the first episode, I think probably sometime this weekend. And the first episode is always going to take the longest because you're working out the initial music and, all of that stuff. And once we get that down, he's going to be able to go through much more quickly. So, I mean, he was pretty confident that he would be done by January.
Very good. With this experience now, have you thought about maybe going back and bringing your other books to audio life?
Well, there is no, how do I put this? I usually don't duplicate stories in different formats. Like A Storm of Secrets is not a novelization of any of the graphic novels. And The Ghost Ship is not an audio drama. There is no graphic novel for The Ghost Ship. Maybe there will be. I certainly haven't planned on it. I'd rather have Gwen work on a new one than rehash this. Because I would much rather be telling new stories than other things. Than
Interesting.
Than telling the same story but in a different format.
Right. Why? I know that's a hard question.
I guess because I still have more stories to tell. So I don't want to waste essentially my time and my money in doing something that I've already done. When I can be producing something new.
Would you say that's a personality trait?
Oh, probably, yeah.
To forge ahead and
yeah, I don't go back. I don't go back ever. It's like even, old boyfriends stay old boyfriends. Never go back.
Stop kissing those frogs.
I do not go back ever. I only go forward.
I love it. I love it. So we are getting towards the end of our hour. One of the things that we love to ask our guests is if you could give new writers or comic book creators, filmmakers, one piece of advice coming into the business, what would that be? At
the risk of sounding flippant, don't be a dick.
I love it. That's our motto. Don't be an asshole.
Yes. That would be number one, because you'd be surprised how being generous, kind, open-minded, how far that will get you. And and you learn more. If you it's just why be that?
It's
But the
such a big
other
world.
more practical would be get your butt in the chair and write.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that there's such a thing as writer's block?
Not really, because for me the answer is usually in something I've already written. I have to go back and find it and then move on. So, but yeah, it can be hard. Yeah, sometimes you get stuck, but it's like, okay, how can I get unstuck? Let me go back to see where I got from, because it's probably the problem is, or the solution is in what you've previously written.
And yeah, I really appreciate the time because, and to what you were saying just previously, is that there's a big enough world out there and a big enough readership that I don't feel like we're in competition with each other. Writers are going to write, readers are going to read, and it's not like we have to vie for like, oh, well, they're reading Madeline Holly-Rosing. I'm, it's like they should be reading my stuff. It's not like that.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, there's going to be people who like my stuff. There's going to be people who don't like my stuff, and that's fine. I mean, I have great friends within the comic community and the writers community, and the stuff they do just may not be my thing. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not my thing. And I'm sure people feel the same way about me. It's just not their thing, and that's completely fair. So no, we're not in competition with each other.
That's wonderful. On that note, you guys, it has been a pleasure. Madeline, you are welcome to stay for our outro so we can say goodbye. But okay. On that note, you guys, this has been Ragin' with Madeline Holly-Rosing. She has got Boston Metaphysical Society. I did it right this time. On Kickstarter. Head over there. We've got the links in the show notes as well as her social media. Make sure that you follow her everywhere. If you've backed it, thank you. If you haven't, hit the share button. We need more eyeballs on this. And the campaign ends on November 19th. Give it a little bit of love. We appreciate everyone who has tuned in. Make sure that you head over to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. We are simulcasting to Ragin ABC as well as Geek Insider. On that note, you know what I need to do? I'm going to drop the card one more time. Madeline.
Why do you do this to people?
Because I'm doing something fun. Can you say, throw my dudes?
Throw my dudes.
Oh my God.
We're out of here, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye. Hey there. This is Meredith Loughran with Ragin. And I wanted to let you know that we encourage and promote independent creators and their projects through organic interaction, consultations, and more. Visit Nita and me at RAGINAVC.com for details and contact information. Hit the button.